The companies claimed it was all legal to protect their investments in trademark products, which were really plants that everyone should have access to. The companies made further claims that since their plants were so much better performance, they were clearly a different product. With huge donations to lawmakers legally via lobbyists and zero transparency that idiots kept voting in, this all got passed with flying colors. As soon as the genetics companies found out how to make a kill switch for their own products, it was simple to reverse it and kill all the other plants once the next law went through. The law was that everyone who had a grandfathered plant in was supposed to be safe, but they were encouraged to voluntarily hand over their plants to get a new genetically modified one. Conveniently, of course, they had to pay a yearly subscription fee for the privilege of owning one of these modified, safer, better plants. A lot of people had already handed in their plants, being told that these new plants are so much better and improved. Others, though, realized that you can't force genetic enhancements onto wildlife without unforeseen circumstances, one of which is health issues for the consumer, and others, traceability if there was an issue, since the foods weren't as easily traceable back to a source. This was convenient whenever there was a health issue. Whereas old plants weren't as easily traceable, the new genetic ones were. Therefore, calling it a safety and traceability issue sounded good, but it was solving an issue that only existed due to genetically modified foods to begin with. People always wanted gun background checks, for example, despite the low amount of credible instances per year. But nobody would pass food background checks. This was all despite the wholesale health issues that continued to go unexplained with GMO food. People still kept water around despite drownings. People kept aborting babies in unmeasurable amounts, but nobody on either side of the political spectrum cared about what they were ingesting. One side said it would cripple organic farms, which of course was a lie. The other side had so many people saying it was so unimportant that would drive food prices up so high. The alarmists scared everyone into not daring. Oh, hold on. Shoot. One side said it would cripple organic farms, which of course was a lie. The other side had so many people saying it was so unimportant and would drive food prices up so high. Okay, sorry, apologize. The alarmist scared everyone into not daring to vote in to see where the food actually came from quality control. For quality control. Meanwhile, the same believed jets, which had moisture coming off the wings, was going to kill everyone. The same people that thought that vaccines were going to make everyone mentally handicapped, but got their useless flu shots every year. Meanwhile, things like the Zika virus actually were messing people up, but nobody took extra precautions while it got handled by the powers that be. Ricky thought about the massive hypocrisy and was so happy he didn't have to put up with it anymore. But Inca glared at him. He'd been trailing off in his mind. So, to combat the Zika virus, what we have to do is... They talked about everything they needed to for malaria and Zika and the parasites, and integrated with the cure they already had for the dog virus. They got with help from some other contractors. It would all travel on some modified mosquitoes that could go provide the antidotes for everything human-related. The good mosquitoes would go mate with the bad ones and share all of the cures with them, and then go bite everybody and cure them. With a few generations of the mosquitoes, everything bad should be eradicated, and the cure would work its way out of the mosquitoes and then go back to normal with the diseases all being destroyed. Another guy came up and talked about some bees he had that could go find all the plants and save them before summer hit and the kill switch triggered. He said that the bees were neutral, so they should join any hive and start sharing the little antibodies on their furry bodies when they rubbed against each other, the other bees in the hives that they would visit. Each bee would go find bees in the wild and rub up against them to get their scent, and then follow them back to the nest and rub on all the bees in the hallways of the hive. Before long, all the plants they find should have the coating undone for the company had already been using its own bees for. Yeah, it was supposed to look like an accident, like, oops, all your plants died, guess you should have went with our superior plants. When in reality it's the native plants that naturally become stronger, while plants coming off the assembly line will all die to the next thing that comes around if they aren't updated with the latest and greatest threats. Ricky thought to himself how the flu vaccine never worked, but how antivirus and anti-malware software on computers had to be meticulously updated by huge support offices. He reasoned that if you have to sit there and try to maintain something by hand isn't self-sustaining, then it will inevitably fail. Why would people rely on things like that to secure food and life? Ricky realized he zoned back out again and started listening. He was hoping this would be done soon. So all we're doing is resetting the code with our untainted bees, another researcher asked. Okay, you two got all that? It's super important. Ricky hadn't been thinking about the actual plan too much. It was a lot to take in. Yeah, what stops the frogs from eating all the mosquitoes? There seems to be a ton of frogs around the new lake. The researchers all looked at each other. Ricky realized he tipped over most of the frog-safe places where the mosquitoes would breed already. Can you guys make something where these mosquitoes can breed for a few weeks without getting eaten by the frogs? Then they should be able to reproduce enough to be fine once they meet up with the other local mosquitoes. Then half the stuff will be cured when they get in the water and the rest from their biting people. Ricky honestly had no idea if it'd work or not, but he had pretty much checked out. Sure, build house for mosquitoes, release bees. Anything else? They all looked at each other unsure if he actually got it or not, and they realized it was pretty much that simple. Yes, but it's very important. This is going to cure or destroy nearly every disease. Another quipped, except tetanus, of course. A corner of them chuckled to each other. Ricky imagined that the people stepping on rusty nails probably killed off a significant chunk of the population after the collapse. Beninka rolled her eyes. Are we done, kiddies? Things to do, right? Beninka had apparently finished putting on her war paint and went from her attractive pasty white face from the lack of sun in the region to looking like a light, absorbent assassin that hides in the shadows waiting to put a knife in you. Ricky tried to make as serious of a face as he could to echo Beninka and support her sentiment. Nobody said anything a moment, then the lead researcher motioned the two teams to get them the bees and mosquitoes. Someone in the corner mentioned that they feel like they were forgetting to tell the duo something but couldn't remember what. Ricky and Beninka were thanked for everything they did, and out they went. Ricky with a cage of bees and Beninka with mosquitoes. Chapter 19, Journey, Morning. It was nice outside. There was a cool breeze. It had eventually cooled down and there had been a lot of drizzle. A pile of bones lay out in the parking lot. The duo did a 360 before they left and saw thick black smoke billowing out several miles further to the north. No crazies had been in sight, and Ricky sensed that they were being covered by the sniper kid. He waved behind him, and a laser blinked twice on his hand. Away the two went, back to their new little homes, to the south by the new lake. Ricky had forgot what the real plan was with the bees, but came up with his own idea. He figured he would release a few bees every couple miles. That way, they would get to where they needed to go. When he got back to camp, he would see if the little girl would come back, and he could give the rest of the bees to her. Hopefully their stronghold could figure out what to do with the rest. The territory outside the health science building felt a lot more lighthearted. There didn't seem to be any new bad guys to be found. The pre-existing bad guys were all being picked on by birds. Ricky and Beninka did their best to steer clear, and Ricky hoped the birds couldn't somehow catch the viruses. They did see one crow with a syringe in its mouth trying to stab other birds that were trying to take it away from him. It eventually got the other birds away far enough and then flew off, very pleased with itself. Ricky couldn't help but wonder if the crows were building something, but tried to push it out of his mind. For some reason, a giant death spaceship appeared in his mind, shooting infected needles. He shook his head, trying to push the thought out. Beninka looked at him like he was being weird. He turned and looked at her with his goofy face, and she snickered. Ricky let a few more bees out. They took off like little doves in each direction to find new happy bee homes. Back the duo went into neutral territory. It looked like it was going to be a nice day again. In the distance, they sensed getting closer back into rat-controlled territory. It would be good to be home. Chapter 20, Good Times. Back in rat territory the coming weeks, into the summer. Beninka and Ricky got back into their territory to see that the rats got bored without the two around and started relaxing. Lots of new baby rats were expected, and many new food ideas were found. There was rhubarb and onions and potatoes, and pretty much unlimited supply of termites. It seemed that people had left some onions and potatoes in the ground, and they kept reproducing in secret underground. When the new veggies popped up, the bees got to them and made sure they would be okay from there on forward. Ricky made a special safe swimming pool for the special mosquitoes that worked out well. For extra protection, he dug a mud pit in a pond where the captured frogs would go get put back into. It was away from the mosquitoes, so they could all get ready properly for when it warmed up. Ricky didn't know exactly how to introduce them to water, so he set their cage in the water. That helped them to reach relatively the same temperature and acclimate properly, sort of like fish.